Okay, so thank you very much for saying yes to meet with me. And um, I guess first a little bit of background and why I reached out to you. So I'm currently a college student and I decided to go to college kind of like everyone else because I had no idea what else to do after high school. And
Sure.
I don't regret going to college. Like having the label of a student, it opened up a lot of opportunities for me to explore the world outside of academics.
Mhm.
But I also like the more I see how the system fails students and the more I connect with others who understand the same thing, which is something that I found through LinkedIn, it's harder for me to just sit in a classroom and care or just exist and like not do anything. And
Yeah.
so I watched your TED talk and as well as like the more recent TEDx talk, and you kind of talk about the different roles that people play, will have to play in the education revolution. And
Yeah.
the thing is, you don't mention the audience of college students and people who have already gone through like the standardized school system, but they haven't yet entered the workforce or become parents. And so my first question kind of was, do you think there is any role that an aware college student could play, whether within the college or just in the choice of paths after college, to contribute to this education revolution?
So that's a really good question. So part of what, just a little bit of context. So I've made, I own a number of schools and I help other entrepreneurs open schools around the world. One of the more difficult things that we have found is by the time somebody usually gets to high school, if they've gone through a conventional schooling system, we don't usually allow them to come into our schools because the mindset has already kind of been shifted, right?
Mhm.
And I've also made the majority of my income as far as what I take care of my family with has been primarily speaking and consulting with Fortune 500s around the world. And they're seeing the college grads that just know how to play school and aren't automatically contributing. So it's not that there is no space for those people. It is, like you said, they've got to have the awareness of what's really going on, but the awareness only goes so far.
Right.
It's great to have awareness. Everybody has awareness of how to be healthy, eat good food and work out. Doing something is different, right? And so for the college students, it's the same thing. It's not just having the awareness. It's okay, well then what? How does that play into your specific journey? And what do you want to do with that information? Because what everybody wants to do with that information really comes back to what's their part, what's their passion, what is their goal for themselves. What is that? So, I would answer that question with a question. Well, what do you want to do? If you are aware of this information, what do you want to do about it? How do you want that to impact your life? How do you want that to direct where you want to go with it? That's where I would come back to you with that.
Right, right. I mean, that is a great question, and I will have to figure that out because, as you know, I have been in the school system. So,
Right. And isn't that ironic? Because we're supposed to go to school to figure out who we are and where we want to go. But the last thing it helps us do is figure out who we are, where we want to go, because we're not busy collecting experiences. We're busy sitting down, listening to the same people that everybody else is, taking in the same information, playing a game of regurgitation, playing a game of like it's not a game of self-awareness. It's a game of I'm playing the same thing as everybody else and hopefully I do it better, but you don't learn anything about yourself. So that's the problem.
right. And grades don't even reflect any sort of skills or learning, even if you have good grades. So,
It means nothing.
I mean, okay, so let's say that I'm interested in the education system and in being part of alternative education, like all so-called alternative education, because it's different from the standard. And
Sure.
so currently I'm pursuing a math degree, but um, I haven't really been thinking about getting a master's in education because I imagine that teaches you to be within the standardized system. And
Right.
also, I can imagine being miserable if I even end up teaching, within schools where you have to have a curriculum. And so I can't really picture any other ways to get into education besides through the current education system. And I was wondering what your thoughts were about this. Like, I guess, are there any other ways to get into education? And if no, like, should there be? You know?
So you mentioned the biggest problem, right? Is you go through and earn these degrees in education, you go get your credentials in education, you go get all of those things are meant to condition you to perpetuate the cycle that's already in place.
Mhm.
That's what that's there for. It's not there to teach you how to unlock a human being. It's there to teach you how to perpetuate a system of controlling a lot of human beings. So my question again back to you would be, well, why would you want to perpetuate that system? So why go through a system that's going to teach you to perpetuate that system when you're already aware that that system is doing so and is not beneficial? Right. So then the question again becomes more fun. Cool. Then what do you want to do? So what are the alternatives that you are looking at? There's obviously, I'm partial to Acton Academy because that's who I've chosen to partner with and collaborate with and launch those. There are other, quote unquote, alternative education spaces, whether that's, the homeschool space, whether that's the Sudbury space, Prenda, Waldorf, there's a million other ways to educate versus play the school game. So my advice would be to explore all of those because none of those need Praxis is another good one. That's a post high school program.
Mhm.
But none of those require you to have a background in traditional ed. None of those require a degree. And in many cases, they would actually prefer that you didn't because they understand the baggage that comes along with that. So I would explore all of those and go, are there any of these that really speak to me? Because then it's about experience. Because if you all of a sudden start looking and go, oh, man, Acton Academy, that's the stuff. I just read Courage to Grow. I'm watching all these videos. I read the articles on Inc. and Forbes. And yes, this is what absolutely makes sense. Well, then you start reaching out to people in that network and go, how do I provide value to you? Here's my skill set. Here's my passion. I want to provide value to you, from the get-go. That's how you get hired. That's how you get connected. That's how you start actually making an impact. And nobody cares if you've got a degree or not.
That does sound amazing. I have a friend who is going to go to do curriculum development. She wants to learn all about it, and she thinks that that's one of the ways that she could change education. But I see that like it could be very difficult from within the system.
You can't. I promise you won't. I get the so by the way, she's not I applaud her for that, right? I applaud her for that initiative. It won't happen. There is a reason that I think it's somewhere close to about 50% of teachers now, once they come out, they get their degree, they get their credential, and they go into the system within 3 years, they've left teaching altogether.
Right.
And that's a big part of the reason is because you go in altruistically. You really want to go in and help young people. The vast majority of people in these systems are phenomenal humans. They really, really are. But you don't have control. You have no power. Without getting all where people start to go, okay, well, that sounds a little crazy. There is so much money in the current educational system. There are so many political ties that are not altruistic, that are controlling our government education, which is what's modeled by most conveyor belt schools, even private schools that model themselves after that, right? That there is no way in hell somebody is going to allow anyone to change anything within it. That's why we are building something different.
Right. Yeah.
Even that is a challenge. We gotta show people what people don't know, what they don't know. People don't realize the religion that they've been indoctrinated into when it comes to school.
I mean, I totally see what you're talking about. I had this amazing 7th grade English teacher who taught my class all about awareness and how the school teaches us to be cows who will basically walk into the same farm, even if it's on fire. And it was because of that teacher that I slowly paid attention through like my further years of high school. And then I got to more of where I am today, which is I've had an internship and I was part of helping this externship program to different countries. And so I have some sort of experience and skills that I look out for outside of academics. And all of these things were because of that seed that was planted earlier. But also that teacher, as you can imagine, got punished by the school system and was not allowed to ever teach the same life lessons again, even though he is the main reason why I am who I am. So
because he was not towing the party line, right? But then even in the middle of kind of waking up at, in 7th grade, so you're 12 years old, you're 13 years old, and you're hearing this message and you're taking it in, there is still this pull socially, culturally, but I should probably go to college because I don't know what else to do. And that's it, everybody else, right? And again, college can be a means to an end, but it usually isn't. And it has nothing to do with education. It has to do with continuing that same pattern of being that cow just marching on to slaughter.
I have noticed that one good thing about college is the label of student, which can get you into many places and like into like opportunities that are outside of the actual classes.
Sure. I bet you could have done it in high school too.
If I had any confidence to think I could do anything.
And that's the game. And that's not your fault. And I'm not saying this is on you. I'm saying that's where, because you're right. Having that label as student helps. Really what it is having that label as young person who's learning to grow, right? So I have a mentorship program too, where I've got young men from all over the country. I have young men who are 15, 16, who are getting career level job offers right now, because again, they took advantage of just being a young person who is hungry, has high morals, high character, strong work ethic, and is going in and wanting to provide value. Of course, that makes more sense, right? Of course, somebody's going, yeah, that's awesome. Oh my gosh, I'm going to bring you in. Like, that's phenomenal. Let's do that. It's way cooler to do that than have some 40-something-year-old dude with a great beard come in and ask for a position. And nobody's like, what the hell? Go do your own thing, right? Being young helps. So I always recommend somebody takes advantage of it. But what's interesting is we've been taught that advantage is only going to come if you're in college. Couldn't be further from the truth. It's usually an in spite of, not a because of, when you're talking college. Yep.
That is very powerful. I guess, okay, so another question is, what do you think are some lessons or literature that contributed to your knowledge of, starting all these schools that you've started? Because clearly just having gotten a certification for teaching, that's not how you learn to do anything.
No, that's how I was taught, that's how I was taught bad habits, that I had to unlearn some of those too, right? Was those certifications. It was a combination of literature is a part of it. And I do have a few places for you a few books for you to check out. But experience is another part. When I talk about the religion of schooling, it's a religion that teaches you not to, it's kind of like the quote from 1984 where it says, they were taught not to, it was like taught not to believe the evidence that they see with their own eyes, or something in that respect, right? Where it's like you see it right in front of you, but you're taught, nope, that's not what you're seeing. That's not what you're looking at. What you're really looking at is this. And people go, oh, okay. Right. And religion of schooling is very much that same thing. And so I saw that very early on too. And I trust my eyes. I trust what I see consistently over and over and over again. And it didn't match what I was being told, which was, a huge indicator. But as far as, literature resources, there's a couple places to go. So one, Courage to Grow is great. That's an early, quick read. That one's an easy one. Come on in. It's okay. I know, I thought so too. Come here. Come say hi.
Hi.
Come say
Hello.
hi.
Hi, what's your name?
Loudon.
Loudon? I'm Janet.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
All right, cowboy. I'll be out in a few. He something. One of the animals. I think one of the animals out there died, and he had to come tell me right now. So that's a quick read. It's very, that one is more Acton-esque because it's literally about starting Acton, but it does go into a little bit of the thought process. But really to kind of dive into the game of education versus schooling, I always recommend anything by John Taylor Gatto, Gatto. And most, and John was, he was an amazing man, one of the best educators this country has ever seen, passed away a few years ago. And he was in the government school system. He was in New York, actually. He was New York State Teacher of the Year. I mean, multiple years. So the guy understands it. He's got a couple books, one, Weapons of Mass Instruction, Dumbing Us Down. And most of these you can find for free on the internet. You can find them as free PDFs. But those will give you really good insight as to the difference between education and schooling and why the school system is developed the way it is.
Right. I mean, that definitely comes down to a long history, particularly in the United States, of factories and trying to get people into factory workers. But the times are different, you know, that might have worked before, but we don't no longer need a majority of people going into factories. We need creative people and we need innovators.
That's right. That's right. And even in that factory model, the whole goal was to get good factory workers who were smart enough to follow directions, but not self-aware, self-confident, and understanding of who they are enough to go do something different and to compete. It was meant for sheep.
Yeah.
And we've kept it intentionally.
That's not something I realized. I thought it was kind of perpetuated, not intentionally, but
Very much intentionally. And it's a mass
worse.
And it's a mass contributor to the issues we have today, societally speaking, culturally speaking. The fact that people can't have civil discourse, the fact that people are more apt and more willing to put their trust and hope in the government to take care of them, and some of these things that are being exacerbated right now, very, very intentional.
Okay, I will definitely take a look at that. Thank you.
Good stuff. Yes, ma'am.
I guess last question, this is more of a curiosity than anything particular, but why is it that you specifically focus on men in your Acton Academy? Yeah,
so my Acton academies are co-ed. They're K through 12, K through 12 boys and girls. So I don't, there's no focus there. The focus there is on good humans. That said, the Apogee program that I have is a mentorship program for young men. And the very simple answer is, I grew up as a young man and I am a man. I can't speak as much to the female mind. I know these 12-year-old, 13, 15, 16-year-old young men. I know exactly how they think. I know when they think it. I know why they think it. I know I was that, right? And I know there's a million more distractions now that, and again, part of that intentionality of, there's a multifaceted thing, education being a huge piece, but there's also this intentionality around breaking down the home, making sure fathers aren't there, making sure they're absent, making sure that anything that is of strong value for manhood is called toxic. And there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. Masculinity itself is a strong set of virtues of a good human being. Toxicity is just being a jerk. It's not the same thing, right? And so I know that they're facing that to a higher degree than any other young men ever have. And I hope to help that as much as possible through the mentorship program.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you
Ma'am.
for having this conversation. Can I post it on like LinkedIn or some other?
You do whatever you want to do with it, as long as it helps you and helps anybody else. And, you know, it is my pleasure. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for the resources. And
Yes, ma'am.
have a
Pleasure.
great day.
You best of luck to you. See you later.
Thank you.